a moment of silence for the tragedy that happened there in the DeKalb County area for our beloved brother that lost his life by serving the citizens of not only DeKalb but the state of Jordan. Thank you all. All right, we'll move right on to the third item on the agenda, and that's approval of the proposed agenda. So moved. It's been second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the review and approval of the September 20th, 2018 minutes.
I move to approve as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved. Before we go to the commissioner's report, Michael, can we get a roll call to make sure those of us that's here, and then all remembers that's on the phone?
Tim Garner,
Here.
Tim Ward,
Here.
Sonia Finley,
Here.
Judy Fitzgerald,
Here.
Kevin Little, Avery Niles,
Present.
Ryan Owens, Steve Queen,
Present.
Tom Rollins, Michael Terrell,
Here.
Mike Yeager.
I'm here by phone.
And we have Tim Ward present. Did you say Tim Ward? I just like to call his name. All right, Mr.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ward, I apologize for no name tag or plate before you. We anticipate budget cuts. Figured we start early with you. Merry Christmas to everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here. And Sheriff Yeager, good to hear you. We got a bunch of Christmas presents for you. Wish you were here to see them, but anyway, good.
I've got somebody standing outside the door that's waiting to collect it.
And that's why he's who he is. He's just going to get one on him. But it's good to see everybody. I was going to joke, reintroduce Assistant Commissioner Scott Maurer, not because he's missed 2 board meetings or anything. I would never bust him out like that. But no, Scott is having some doctor's appointment with his back today. And he said, this is the second one I missed. I said, don't worry, Scott. Don't mention it. But he does. He sends his regards and wishes he could be here. In fact, I'll compliment Assistant Commissioner Maurer. In April, we are actually hosting the National Institute of Corrections Executive Network Group. These are folks that supervise probation and parole throughout the nation, and we've been asked to host that in Savannah, so we'll certainly give you more details, but we are pleased that Scott was able to pull that together. There's a couple of presentations I want to make, but I'm going to hold off because we're waiting on one of the individuals to come. But before we move on to that, as you know, we talk about one officer, one family, and one community. The community is so important because we recognize we cannot do this job by ourselves. It takes those in the community, whether they're treatment providers, whether they're family members, whether they're faith providers, takes us all working together. This past Monday, we had our service day throughout the state, and all of our offices, as well as us here in central office, went and gave back to the community. I want to brag on the senior management team. We delivered 125 homeless care packages. Whether they were in a tent, whether they were under a bridge, whether they were in what they call a cat hole. But what I was proud of the most, it wasn't so much about what was in the bag. It was about those individuals knowing somebody cared.
Yes.
And just spending time and asking their name. Is there anything else we can do for you? And there was one lady that wanted a blanket. Gave her a blanket, and her birthday was the day after Christmas, and she said, "This is my birthday present." And I thought, wow, you know, we really do. There's a lot of hurt in the world, but we really do have it good. But anyway, with the season, I want to let you know, I'm going to move on in just a second to a video, but we do have some honored guests with us. Miss Vicki, come on up here, Miss Vicki.
Come on up.
Come on, you know you look good in them jeans. And Miss Vicki has actually certified my collard greens. She has tasted them. She said they were good. Come on. You know, sometimes folks don't get the recognition they should. But I'm reminded of a story at NASA. There was one of the custodians that swept the floor, and they asked, said, "What do you do?"
Right.
And he said, "I put men on the moon." That time it was men. Put men on the moon. Because if they don't have a clean environment to work in, it makes a difference. And we want you to know that we do not take for granted what you do day in and day out. She is going to retire. Oh. So we are going to miss her. I didn't know you were going to do all this. We've got just a little note for you, just to say thank you that you're members. A little mug, you can drink what you want to out of it when you retire. You don't have to worry about coming to work. Miss Vicki, we love you. That is one sweet lady, I can assure you. And you see her around, but she's going to be missed. Another one. Ann, come on up. Ann Amy Akins. She is retiring. She will have a reception today at 1:30. But we wanted to tell you good luck. Congratulations. And we wanted the board to specifically see you day in and day out. See what I mean? It don't matter how bad your day is. Ann's going to be there to brighten it. And she does a wonderful job. I remember the first time I walked into the Clayton Day Reporting Center. She was working down there when I first met her. It was just refreshing. You walked in, "Can I help you?" And that was your first contact. And you could tell this was a wonderful individual. She taught me a saying. Have you ever heard all that in a bag of chips? I never had heard that. And I kept getting it messed up. And she said, "Well, you know, some think they all that in a bag of chips." And I wanted you to know you are all that and a bag of chips. Very, very good. Mr. Chairman, thanks for indulging the time. We're going to show you a video from our service day. We have Natalie Esparza with us, and she gets credit for doing that from public information, reflecting all the good work being done. So we'll just take a quick moment here when everything pulls up and just see this video. It's a short one, but it's pretty powerful. Natalie, thank you. Job well done, and thank you to the board for supporting us in our efforts. It's just a little piece of what we do, but we always recognize we cannot do it alone. I want to let the board know our annual report will be released January 3rd. We looked at all the drafts earlier this week, and I think you'll find some good information that recaps the year. So you will be receiving that. Had a transition meeting a couple weeks ago with Governor-elect Kemp. We talked about our transition document with him and his team. He was very impressed and pleased with the work being done in DCS, and we talked about some of our challenges going forward. One of the things we talked about is prior to the new governor coming in, we did a SWOT analysis to really assess our strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Regardless of who the governor was going to be, we needed to do that. As you know, we're about 3.5 years young, and we thought that was certainly the time to do that. One of the things that came out of this, and I got to credit Assistant Commissioner Scott Maurer with it, is we have created our strategic planning and research unit. Now, used to all that was handled in IT. And you know, you get a lot of requests for data, and sometimes you couldn't be as responsive, sometimes you couldn't provide everything they needed. And you know, as being the agency of next practices, staying ahead of research. So I want to compliment Phil Sellers, our IT director, for agreeing and working to shift some of his staff over. Because a lot of times people don't want to give up things. But he readily did that. Our new strategic planning and research unit, I think he was introduced maybe at the last meeting, but Dr. Nick Powell, Nick, where are you? Right here behind me. He's also known as Chainsaw. I'll share with you why. So I'm at our desk one day, and we're going over all this data. I said, well, Nick, what about comparing this to this? And he said, well, Michael, he said, it's kind of like comparing apples to chainsaws. So he got the name Chainsaw, because we all had to look at him. He said, in other words, that doesn't make any sense. So I certainly appreciated the way he said that. I wasn't quick enough to catch on. It moved right along. So thank you, Dr. Chainsaw. As you know, we've had past discussions about our dashboard. Many of you have been wanting a lot more information, a lot sooner. I will agree, I am not the most patient person in the world. In fact, I shared that with Governor-elect Kemp. That, you know, one of the things that frustrates me is IT, it never moves as quick as you want it to. You can think a lot of good things, but it takes a lot of work to get there. So it was one of those, do we just give things that are static that we report, or do we want a report that is dynamic, that can really tell us what's going on? I don't want my car to overheat and just quit. I want to see that it's starting to overheat so I can pull over and take care of it before it does quit. And that's what dashboards are designed to do. So this morning what we wanted to do is let you know that IT has pretty much built the engine, and that's been the heavy lift. Now we've just got to see all the gauges we want on it, so we will be refining that. But the good thing is, with our new unit, we're having a single funnel for data from those that want to request any particular piece of data. It can be done. Dr. Powell has his staff here on this front row, and we're so appreciative of them and the good work they are already doing and have been doing. So right now, and Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions for what I've reported on, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Powell for his presentation, and then we'll continue with the agenda, if that's good with you.
That's excellent.
Very good. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.
Good morning, everybody. Like Michael said, I'm Nicholas Powell with Strategic Planning and Research. I would like to take this chance to publicly thank Michael and Sandra for this opportunity, and thank my teammates here. It's been a lot of fun arguing and geeking out with them over the statistics. I think we're in for a long ride. So, like Michael said, we recently did the SWOT analysis because, I strongly believe that data doesn't exist in a vacuum. I want to kind of talk over some of the things that we have on the horizon that we want to do with our data in response to some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats we identified when discussing with the senior management team. So first, we talked about weaknesses, and when doing that, we had this idea of what is success, and how do we communicate that message cohesively all the way from Michael down to the frontline officers. And then we also talked about opportunity with the new governor coming in. What can we do to make new relationships, build strong new relationships, and then threats. We want to make sure that although we don't believe criminal justice is ever perfect, that we haven't undone some of the progress that we've already made. So when we're having this meeting, Michael had all the senior management around a table and says, what's success? Are we sending less people to prison? Are more people completing treatment? And of course, all of us nodded our heads. It's a no-brainer. However, success to an officer might be, did I make all my contacts so my boss didn't fuss at me? So that's something that we're wanting to work on and get a more cohesive message throughout our agency with our data. So we've kind of launching a four-pronged response to that SWOT analysis of things that you can expect in the future. First will be descriptive statistics. We want to make basic offender information readily available to our stakeholders. We're also going to start routinely publishing a population report that'll give some narrative around DCS outcomes. We're revamping our performance measures to make sure that they're more proactive and relevant to our work, that we can, like Michael said, we can look at and engage problems and concerns before it's too late. And then also we're establishing program metrics for all the innovative interventions we have, like the MORE program, RPH, and DRCs. So I want to tell you just a little bit about each one of these and then show you some live data that you can start looking at. So first, with the descriptive statistics, we're going to work with Public Affairs to launch a data and research tab to our DCS public website. And this way, anybody can go to our website and access this information. So the first phase is going to be baby steps. We're going to grab some of the low-hanging fruit, just have basic demographics, and then some case breakdowns. And I'll show you a little bit what I mean by that. So some of the demographics we could include would be gender, age, and race of what our population is composed of. And then for case breakdowns, we want to have crime type, and Mr. Ward, we purposely made this so it speaks to the GDC website. This is how you guys have it broke down, so that way people can compare the different populations if they're wanting to get a better picture of the Georgia criminal justice system. So the other day I got called by a professor, and he said that he wanted a crime breakdown like this because he was wanting to show his students that all the violent people are in prison and all the nonviolent people are on community supervision. So I think having this information readily available will help dispel some myths around our work, because as you can see, the violence is the biggest bar there. And then also for sentence type, we want to let people know like how individuals who are currently on supervision, how they started. So there's a lot of talk about prison and community supervision and different populations, but as all of us who work in the field know, it's a little bit more fluid than that. Unfortunately, it's the same people going in and out. So as you can see, if you add in parole and the people who started off of a max out a split sentence, who had prison prior to beginning their community supervision sentence, 45% of our population right now started their supervision in prison. Which I think, given the national discussions around mass supervision, I think this is pretty interesting, considering that probation was intended to be an alternative to incarceration, but almost half of our population started incarcerated. And then we also want to start publishing regular population reports. So even though we're more concerned with some of those intermediate outcomes like employment and treatment completion, any conversation around criminal justice is going to have to involve recidivism talk. So we want to be able to provide multiple failure measures when we publish this report, as well as give context. We can give recidivism across demographics by geographic location, as well as explore alternate explanations. So if there's some kind of spike or trend, maybe with us publishing our own report, maybe we can give a little bit more insight on what may be going on, as well as it gives us the chance to proactively respond to any concerns. So I mentioned that we want to include 3 multiple measures. And the reason we want to do that is because this gives us a comprehensive idea of what's going on. with our agency, because all these have benefits and limitations. So we can calculate rearrest, which is great because it's the most comprehensive and most timely failure measure, but not all arrests result in a conviction, which means this number is going to be inevitably inflated.
Right.
And then also we have reconviction, which is much more representative of criminal activity, but we can't pull this number until adjudication's concluded. So we have to factor in court processing time, which can skew the numbers a little bit. And then reincarceration. This is what's most commonly used in other states, and it gives us insight into our most costly response to criminal activity. However, because of the high cost of incarceration, a lot of people have skin in this game. So there's other influences outside of what we do that could be affecting this number. So we're one of the only few states that don't report on all three. So we'd like to move forward by changing that with this report. And this just gives you a picture. This is a count of these failure measures. Just gives you a picture of some of the variance, so you can see why we would need to look at all three to have a comprehensive understanding of what's going on. And what we're trying to do is get ahead of when we get requests like, hey, give us a recidivism rate as of today. There's a little bit more to it than that. So we want to be proactive and start publishing these reports on a regular basis so that when stakeholders have concerns and have questions, we can give them good, up-to-date information, accurate information. And then also I talked to you about being able to look into trends and alternate explanations. So recently there was a report published pointing out an increase in revocations of probation population, which we did notice that, and that is concerning to us. But we want to start looking into it. We started looking into our operations and realized that David and his team have really beefed up our fugitive service and deployed arrest teams in every circuit, as well as given extra training to our immediate response teams. So we wanted to look at to see are our officers being less lenient, or are we just getting better at apprehending fugitives? So we ran some of these numbers to show you, and you can see with the blue being the number of warrants served, and orange being the average time it takes us to serve those warrants, you can start seeing a trend where the number of warrants being served is going up, and the number of how long it's taken us to serve warrants is going down. So I think if you look at the third quarter here, it gives a good example of we served almost 2,000 more warrants in 21 less days on average. So that's going to affect our rate. Not that we're not still concerned about an increase in revocation rates. However, we want to make sure we're understanding the full picture and we're attacking it at every angle. And then this idea of revamping performance measures. So we're kind of creating a paradigm shift around this. So as we're standing up the agency, we would send a spreadsheet out to all of our division heads and say, hey, give us this information. Well, now we've met with the division heads to understand what they need. We've tapped into their dashboards. We've worked with IT to automate as much of it as the data collection as possible so that we can start delivering a performance measure report to them on a quarterly basis and as requested. And then we've also made there's a common pitfall of trying to cram a concept like employment with a policy expectation, like how often we expect our officers to verify employment. Those are kind of two different things. So what we want to get at with performance measures is, what kind of progress are we making and are there any problems? But if you got policy and a concept crammed in the same one, it's kind of hard to parse that out. So we've started separating those. And then, like I said, we want to deploy a tool rather than gathering numbers. So this is just a demo. This is the only thing on the website that is not real data, but just to kind of give you an idea of what our division heads can start having delivered to their inbox as opposed to submitting numbers as a task every quarter. So we can look at our performance measures like we were just talking about. And these are those concepts, those things that we feel if they go up, we're getting closer to pursuing our mission, like residential stability, treatment completion, employment rate. And then also here, in the upper right-hand corner, we have policy expectations. These are the things that we set the standard on. So we don't want to compromise that standard, but we may need to look at it and analyze it to make sure that the goalposts are in the right place. And then we can also, this bottom left corner shows you what we can do with failure rates. I mean, I wanted to show you, we want this to be interactive. So we're going to have the DCS failure rates over here, but you can also click on the geographic location and look at it by area. And then also case activity. I thought this was really interesting, and could be really empowering knowledge, like for a chief at the local level. So you look and see that we have 83,000. Like I said, these are not real numbers. You have 83,000 offenders at the beginning of a quarter, and then you have 85,000 at the end of a quarter. But there can be a lot of things going on that's changing that number than just a simple, we got 2,000 new cases. So I think by understanding what's going on, we can have earlier intervention on if there's any processes that we're coming up short on. And then finally, we want to establish program metrics to our innovative programs. Like I said, we're currently working on a report for more that we expect to have at least preliminary results for you by our next board meeting. And it will have an executive summary, so we won't ask you to read an entire report. But we're also going to include these in the collateral archive for public affairs. This will be information that they can use when our leadership goes and presents on these programs across the nation. And then we are going to have quarterly performance measures for these programs so that we can monitor progress and identify problems early on. And then, like I told you, you can expect that report coming up. Any questions about anything we have in the works?
I just have one. You mentioned about the employment opportunities that the probationers or the returning citizens have. Are we capturing the level of individuals that we supervise and looking at their level of education plus employment opportunities?
Yes, that's a great example. And when I was talking about the wanting to take deeper dives on those contextual variables, is we can tease that out. We can control for, is education what's actually driving this, or is it lack of employment opportunities that's driving this? So yeah, yes sir.
And the only reason I see that is because the economy
Right.
is driving a lot of the employment rates, at all-time levels. But I just want to make sure that these individuals are benefiting from those jobs.
Right.
Excellent.
Yes sir. Any other questions?
I do have a question. First of all, I want to commend you. First of all, that's a really nice presentation, and I love the approach. So I wonder how y'all think about preparing individuals who haven't had this kind of information to make it actionable. And how are you doing that within the department? Because it's one thing to have data, and then one thing to say, now how do we as leaders, managers of different departments, how do they use it? Have you given some thought to that, or how's that rolling out alongside of really, really an impressive overview? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have given some thought to that, and we're in regular conversation about this. Like I said, the SWOT analysis wasn't a one-time thing. We're meeting regularly.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've gotten to share what we're working on with some of my colleagues.
Yeah.
So like me and Michael were talking this morning, we're going to huddle back up and talk about just that. Like how can we start deploying some of these measures?
I will add, Commissioner Fitzgerald, one of the things is first, here's the starting point, that of course the boards see it first and know what's in development. Subsequently, meetings will take place with like corrections, with parole, with judges, with district attorneys, and there'll be a time where we'll gather what specific information they would need to, because if it's information but it's not relevant to what they need, they're probably not going to look at it. So that's one thing, and the thought right now is probably coordinating that with CJCC, because everybody comes to the table. All disciplines of criminal justice is represented. So we can talk about it, we can know, so that if there's a specific thing that they want to look at, ideally go to a website and find it. But like Nick said, if they want something contextual, then that request can be made. But the full rollout of it has not been thought through, but that's what that's the process we're looking at, and certainly welcome any suggestions and ideas, and that is a wonderful point, because you see a lot of things that are out there and nobody knows are there, or they don't even know what it says.
Or know where to go get it.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, thank you. And I'm sort of asking, as a sister agency,
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
struggle with the same thing: the great ability to gather and present data more effectively. But we're awash in data, but that doesn't mean we're taking the right action. So I think we're learnings that we can share with one another. So, but thank you. I think it's a really excellent start. Thank you for the presentation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right, we'll move on into the committee reports, and we'll start off with Mr. David Morris.
I would embrace your nickname. I'm not going to share with the board what my nickname is, but I wish it were Chainsaw. If you would bear with me, I've got a head cold that is coming on, so I'll try to be brief. And we've had a very successful year in field operations and DCS. And I want to thank everyone in the field that's making that happen. It's doing the work day in and day out. Couldn't ask for a better team, no doubt about it. First of all, we've remissioned some clerical positions to allow for certified officers that previously were working solely in the courtrooms to carry caseloads. And we've realized 35 positions to date that are now carrying full caseloads rather than sitting in a courtroom all day long. That's now being done by clerical staff. So that's a big plus. Our automated offender case review was deployed in September. It generates the need for a chief to do a case review either based on negative activity from the offender or lack of activity from the officer. We have, to date, since September, conducted 11,400 case reviews. So that is being very successful. And of course, we're tweaking that along the way, whether it's not enough or if it's too many notifications. So more to come on that. We've piloted or worked with a private company, Deloitte, as far as a staffing analysis, as well as reentry, and I believe Michelle will touch on that more in depth when she presents, awaiting the final results from that study. We have 350 officers that will be working a 9-day detail for the Super Bowl, and looking forward to that somewhat. I'm pleased to announce that we've actually saved 4 lives with naloxone, with the opioids. We've had 2 in Augusta, 1 in Lafayette, and 1 in Ludowici. So that has proven to be a very positive. Our peer support team is up and running. We have 10 members on the team, and we've been utilized quite a bit, quite frankly, to include going to South Carolina after their prison riots. So very good work there. Our officers have found 250 firearms this year. Most of them were loaded and within access of the offenders when we located them. So never can be too safe there. Collaboration continues with ATF, Safe Task Force, DEA Strike Force here in Atlanta. We're adding a member there. Kudos to James Bergman and his team. Our fugitive squad have arrested 305 people to date, which is 112 more than last year. So very good work there. They're unbelievable what they do. It's a very dangerous job, but kudos to them. We remain committed to CARP, the Child Abduction Response Team, as well as ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force with the GBI. And we're also working with the Attorney General, Chris Carr, on anti-gang networking, working closely with that. Our IRT, our Immediate Response Team, have extradited 69 individuals, 32,000 miles. We've operated in 39 joint operations to include Reentry Summit, Victim Visitors Day, Respect the Recovery, Secret Service Detail in Savannah, and as well as Hurricane Michael. We had a big showing there and great work done. Our ESP team, Enhanced Supervision Practices, has trained 800 officers to date, and we're well within our time frame there moving forward. And also, lastly, caseloads are at an all-time low since DCS, right at 100, and our vacancies are at 41. So if there are no questions, that is the end of my report.
Wow, that's a great report, David. Appreciate that very much. How does the employment rates look, the retention of officers now? Is that getting better in the number of employees or vacancies you have?
I believe around 10% turnover rate, so it's fairly consistent.
Yeah. Encouraged about the case rates too.
Yes, sir.
100.
Absolutely.
You're doing great.
Thanks, sir.
If I may, Chair Barnard, on that, a lot that lends that, there's a lot of folks that are eligible for retirement. And as you know, when the law enforcement received a pay raise, a lot of them thought, candidly, we're going to wait those 8 consecutive quarters. We are pleasantly surprised that the number is much smaller as those, just because you're eligible to retire doesn't mean you're going to retire. I joke and say, hey, you may retire, but you still got 100% of your bills. So that makes a difference. But that was a pleasant surprise on the HR side, because that was one of our challenges, worried about that knowledge drain going out the door.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Re-entry with Miss Stanley.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy holidays to each of you and to your families. Just want to highlight a few community engagements we've had with reentry services. We're currently working with the Governor's Mansion with the individuals that are there from Atlanta Transition Center by placing mentors with them. We thought it was important not to just have someone meet with them while they're there, but someone that's going to transition with them home. So we actually invited mentors from as far down as South Georgia, as well as the metro area, to be there with us on last week to meet with 12 individuals, and we had 11 mentors, and before they left that day, everyone was paired with someone. A couple actually took 2 mentors, and we felt that that was okay. There are some skills or some things that you may need to be supported on that you may need more than one individual to do that with. So we employed technology to be a help through either FaceTime or video conferencing, text, phone calls, as well as some face-to-face connections with them to ensure we're supporting them on their transition back. So we look forward to continuing that partnership, of course, with the Atlanta Transition Center and the Governor's Mansion through our I Choose Support mentoring program. We also had an opportunity to partner with Prison Fellowship on the Angel Tree Initiative, and that actually provides Christmas gifts to those kids whose parents are incarcerated. So we actually put the charge out to some of our stations of hope, as well as our unit as a whole, to see how many kids we can actually sponsor a Christmas for. And that's not coming from us. When they open that gift, it's coming from their parents. So we thought that it was important for us to do that, and we look forward to continuing that annually. I shared with you at last board meeting that all 3 of our grants ended well. We completed everything on the 30th with BJA. I had mentioned our desk review was positive, didn't have any major findings. But lastly, we was waiting on our final evaluation, and that's been completed by ARS. Just got that in hand on yesterday. 126 pages. I have not had an opportunity to finish reading it, but look forward to the next board meeting sharing with you all those findings from that evaluation over that 4-year period for the grant, as well as David mentioned the Deloitte study. We're looking to be able to engage both of those things together to determine how we move reentry forward into the future. How do we expand statewide based on lessons we learned through that evaluation and what we learned from the analysis from Deloitte as it relates to our caseload analysis, as well as how we deploy our reentry services and how we can team those things together to save time for our CSO officers. We feel just roughly from just a snapshot of some of the information they've shared with us, 3% of the time that the CSO officers are spending doing reentry services work, we should be doing as a reentry services unit. So that leaves more time for them to focus on supervision. But we're looking forward to the rest of those findings. We only have preliminary findings both from the evaluation and from Deloitte, but hopefully with the next board meeting, I'll be able to share those recommendations with you all. Lastly, to commemorate the 4 years from the grant, we're going to have an event on January the 10th at Dipstick from 1 to 3, and we invite you all to join us. But we wanted to take a look at those 4 years and actually go over some of those evaluation findings with our sister agencies, with our community, with our faith base, and those nonprofits that have been a part of that 4-year journey. So if your calendar is free, we would appreciate you coming and joining us for that 2-hour window time. Lastly, I'll close out with just a few highlights for some of our community coordinators around the state. David mentioned about Hurricane Michael with our RRT team being deployed. We also had our community coordinator that worked with Faith Community Outreach to not only just provide words of encouragement and support, but they completed 97 food and hygiene packets and had that on site to give out to those that had been impacted by the hurricane. In Gwinnett, our community coordinator Lee Robbins partnered with Path to Success Resource Fair. We had roughly 15 major employers on site that had about 100 job opportunities available to those that were supervising that showed up for that event. Out of the 75 participants that were there, 27 received a job on the spot. We actually have an additional 40 applications that was taken that's still being considered, and we're hoping that that employment will come through as well with some of those employers. So lastly, I'll just leave you all with, we continue to look for opportunities we can support not only those that we supervise, but support our communities as a whole. Any questions for me?
I do have one question. Era, is that Applied Research
It
Services?
is, I'm sorry.
Can you tell me, what's the scope? Is it program impact, or what exactly are they assessing?
Actually, it looked at everything that was laid out in the grant that we would accomplish. Mainly reduce recidivism, if the programs and services we employed, if we made an impact. And that could be through our community coordinators with developing resources in those communities to be made available for those transitions. It could be our impact from an in-reach perspective. Did we make an impact with meeting with them in prison prior to them being released and developing that transition plan? Those are just a couple of areas. But most importantly, and I'll let this little cat out the bag, because Judge Spears has shared this with me, we did see a reduction in recidivism based on the different programs and the tools that we applied over the 4 years. So from his preliminary, without me reading 126 pages just yet, he shared everything that we laid out in the grant with BJA that we would do, we met. So it's promising. I'm sure there are some areas that's being recommended that we need to improve upon, but we look forward to receiving that too and trying to employ what we need to do to be better.
It's great.
Excellent.
Good job.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Ms. Stanley, thanks for your report. I'm curious if your division would be able to help Roland and corrections with the relatively large list of those we just can't seem to find housing for. And it's just sort of there and they just sort of spend their time in prison because there's no place to go, parole to. Is there any help you might be able to provide there?
Yeah, and it's of course something that we talk about in this room. I actually have a meeting with Donna Tebow with GBC the first of the year, first week in January, to kind of talk about that problem housing list and just how we can collaborate together to start trying to be a little bit more proactive. We continue to reach out to our communities for housing providers. We work hand in hand with field services with the housing unit, of course, to try and bring on additional housing providers. But we all know it's tough. We have more people needing housing than people can provide housing. But it's something that we definitely have on our radar to continue to work towards.
Well, we'll do our part. You sort of try to organize this. If there's some help that we can, and I'll speak with the board. We'll put some employees with you, your employees, to try to see if we can tackle that problem.
Thank you.
It could obviously help so much with transition, help an awful lot with taxpayers' dollars. Tim doesn't have to oversee them. I think there's right around 1,000, so it could go, but no place to go to.
It's definitely, like, as I mentioned on our radar, it's always housing and employment are those two key things that we continue to try and tackle. Anytime we're out speaking to the community, that's what we're asking for, that's what we're trying to engage. And hopefully, maybe the first of the year, when we see how we're gonna implement statewide, we'll be able to hopefully touch into a few more individuals that may can help us with housing beyond the 17, pilot sites that we was able to conquer during this 4-year period of time.
Thanks for your enthusiasm.
One realistic note of that 1,000, nearly 700 are sex offenders. And so, of course, housing providers, so that doubles the challenge with it.
I can give you an example, put this in more realistic terms. I actually, by chance, met with one of those on the list yesterday, and he's been on the list. Parole granted him back in 2014. He's still living in the prison because he's a sex offender, now done well over 30 years, no place to live. A lot of disabilities too, and wheelchair, the works, and not just no place to live.
I certainly want to add, Department of Behavioral Health and our resources, where there are folks that have a diagnosed serious mental illness, we do have resources, so we want to make sure anywhere we can be, we're at the table connecting for that. I know that's a challenging group as well, so.
You got to work with Letitia on that.
Yes, good, we'll do everything we can to assist there, thank you.
That's one of the issues that the federal government is looking at with the federal side of reforms, criminal justice reform, is how do we as a nation really address the issue with the reforms and the success that Georgia has had. And it will be interesting to see how they will ask or inform HUD on a lot of the housing on the federal side. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Mr. Mike Kraft, Field Services.
Good morning, board members. Speak to you today about field services and what we have going on there. In addition to the automated review process that David spoke about a little bit earlier, we also have a team that's led by Mark Morris, who is leading our audit unit, which will also lay human eyes on cases and take a look at processes, take a look at things that we're doing. His team has prepared a comprehensive audit instrument, and actually we're rolling that out to the field. They've done some test work on it and looking to start in January with an audit process to supplement the automated review process that we have. The bottom line is constant quality improvement is our goal. How do we be the best agency there is, and how do we make us the best that we are? So, that's one of the reasons for that audit unit, so we're putting a lot of work into that right now. University of Georgia, in addition, has completed a tool to assess the programming for our day reporting centers and for our counselors. And we've done trial runs of the instrument, and it showed a very high reliability. And so statewide assessments will be conducted for the day reporting centers and the grant-funded day reporting centers starting in January. And then they'll be concluded by March. So we're looking forward to see how we're doing with programming and how we're doing with what we're doing out in the field to help folks turn their lives around. On that note, with the day reporting centers, Gwinnett Day Reporting Center just celebrated its first commencement this month with 12 graduates. They just opened the first of the year, so we were great to see 12 graduates. But I think when you look at big picture for our agency of all of our day reporting centers, so far this year we've had 1,118 graduates statewide. Now, if you look back 25 years ago, if people had a substance abuse issue, we basically treated it by putting them in prison. And these individuals have not only started a program, but completed a treatment program to turn their lives around on substance abuse. It is a great way to try to work with someone with a substance abuse. And so far we have seen that if people complete the program, they tend to stay crime-free. They tend not to get back into substance abuse again. So kudos to the folks in the field that are working in those day reporting centers. Over 1,000 folks have been diverted and completed the program this year. The probation options management is our hearing officer unit that works with judges in an effort to deal with technical violations without them going back before the court. Work with them administratively. And our POM team met with the Chattahoochee Circuit to explain the POM hearing officer program. And it was new for some of the judges. We've had a lot of turnover statewide with judges the past few years. And it was a refamiliarization with others. It was a successful meeting, but now we're planning for opportunities to go out to some of those other circuits and meet with some of those judges where there's been some turnover and some new faces have come aboard and rebrief them on that POM program in an effort to streamline dealing with technical violations and really free up the court to deal with matters that they need to deal with. Commissioner Niles, that will actually conclude my presentation today. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I know that you have, you're standing in the gap for the Georgia Commission on Family Violence.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to move into that?
Mr. Chair, if you would allow me to, I would like to just slide right into there and keep you from jumping up and down.
If Barbara don't mind, I don't mind.
All right. For the Georgia Commission on Family Violence, Ms. Thomas can't be here today, so I'll be reporting out. September 20th at the DCS board meeting, the DCS members voted to adopt revised rules and regulations for the family violence intervention programs. The rules and regulations were received and filed with the Administrative Procedure Division, and they'll be effective December 23rd, 2018, with the regulations taking effect January 1st, 2019. So the new regulations have come in. The previous rules were in place since 2004, so it was time for a revision. In anticipation of the new rules coming into effect, the Commission on Family Violence staff has been working with the Family Violence Intervention Program providers statewide on the new rules and regulations. So far, 192 Family Violence Intervention Program facilitators have been on board. They've had a chance to touch those individuals. 110 family violence intervention providers in the state of those 110, 106 have been onboarded. The remaining 4 providers, they're actually working through those also. That's more paperwork that they're having to straighten out and get those things completed. So we're looking at 100% of being completed there. The next step is to assign new certification dates for providers and facilitators as long with certification numbers. The Commission on Family Violence is in the process of creating 20 hours training for all new facilitators that's going to be required to take with the Commission on Family Violence. So at the last quarter of this year, the Commission on Family Violence staff has been working really hard to make sure that everybody's aware of the new rules, everybody is good with the new rules, and we've done everything we can to bring people into compliance on that. Jennifer Thomas actually spoke with a counterpart in Michigan who mentioned that Georgia right now is on the cutting edge when it comes to family violence intervention program certification. And I think that person might have been a little bit envious actually when she was talking to him when I spoke to Jennifer this morning. Commission on Family Violence also would like y'all to know that they're very appreciative of the DCS legal team as well as the DCS IT team to allow them to fully implement this program. So that concludes my report for the Commission on Family Violence.
On those 4, you don't see that being an issue with compliance?
No, sir. When I spoke to Jennifer, she said those were more like an address would be left out or just something on the paperwork wasn't completely filled out, so they were going back and working those again to bring those into compliance.
Excellent.
To make sure there's no issues there.
Is there any questions for Mike on family violence? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Neville, how are you?
Good morning, I'm doing well, thank you, Chairman. I have a brief presentation for you guys this morning just to highlight some areas of misdemeanor probation. But real quick, I want my staff to stand up if they would, just so you guys can put a face to a name. Everything that I'm talking about today would not be done without these people on my team, so I just want to publicly thank each one of you guys.
So no one else need to publicize their employee?
Hey, I'm trying to be above and beyond here.
Just saying.
But thank you guys, honestly, and I do want to let the board know that the providers statewide have been very helpful this year and very cooperative as far as going above and beyond and trying to do what they can to be in compliance. So it's been a very good year so far. Let's see if I can get this thing to true. All right, so some statistics that we have, of course, we have 77 providers, 51 of them are governmental, 26 are private. We have 782 contracts, 150 are governmental and 652 are private. We're currently doing an internal audit. Misdemeanor probation oversight is auditing ourselves to try to make sure that all the contracts are in compliance and that they are up to date. So we will be finishing that up in January. There are 946 employees, and then our 2019 registration will be due from the providers on December 31st, and then we will send out their certificates for their 2019. Some accomplishments that I want to highlight, of course, we've done 100% of all the providers have been audited this year. We had 10 providers that had 0 findings in 2016 and 2017 so far. So we're going to be meeting after this meeting to see who's going to be that has 0 findings for this year, and we'll report that for next year. We have developed our What We Look For. That was our 22-page document that we provided to the providers that kind of lets them know everything that we're going to be looking for, how they can pass an audit, what they need to be in compliance with. We've also developed an employee handbook, and of course our training unit has provided 234 training hours, and that's not including our GPACS conference that we were a part of or the GMA conference that we attended. Our next steps is what I'm excited about. So for 2019, we will be meeting on January 10th also with all of the providers, and we're going to develop a 2019 strategic plan involving the entities. So it will be not just the DCS strategic plan, it will be a strategic plan involving all of the providers so that we can kind of of move forward. And my next slide kind of breaks down those topics that we've come up with. We are going to be doing a train the trainer. So instead of just DCS providing all of the training, we're going to get some of our heavy hitters that have been volunteering throughout the past couple of years with our training unit, and we're going to train them so that we can kind of broaden some of that hours that we're providing. We're going to be refining the compliance process, a few little things that we've noticed over the past couple of years that maybe we can streamline that. We've been noting trends as far as the findings. So for 2017 and 2018, if you've had a consistent trend with the same kind of findings, then we will be bringing up some type of different sanction matrix opportunities for somebody or any provider that has a consistent trend in those same kind of findings, seeing how we've been doing most of the training, and we've talked it through, and if it's a continuing trend, we'll probably have to move forward towards that next sanction matrix. And then one thing that we have implemented because of the SWOT analysis, what was talked about earlier, is increasing our communication. So I've been to a few speaking engagements, and I usually get, well, we didn't know there was a misdemeanor probation oversight. So that kind of tells me, well, we need to get out there. So we're going to be trying to get on some of the judges' conferences and some other speaking events in order to get our names out there so they know who to come to. And then also reaching out to the governing authorities, because as you know, the law changed in July that it was now the governing authority that approves the contract versus the chief judge. So, of course, last year we were sending it to the chief judge, and we continue to do that, but then this year we're going to be moving forward to communicating with the governing authority if they're interested.
We would be.
I've heard that. I don't know why is this. Where do I point this at, Evan?
Any topic? Okay.
Okay, so like I said, our 2019 strategic plan is going to develop, we're going to try to develop that with the providers as an organization in order to track and report progress while expanding participation from the providers. So we're going to get their feedback. What we're going to talk about is, we're going to break it down for goals, strategy, and actions. And I've actually worked with Dr. Chainsaw on this, so he's been very helpful, so I appreciate that. So our goals will just be a broad statement of action. Our strategy will be a statement of steps that are going to be able to attain those actions, and then we're going to just define those actions, and we're going to get all of that feedback from the providers. So one of the top topics that I've already identified that of course we'll get the feedback from them is we want to have consistency statewide. So if we're having the same kind of findings, we need to decide why are we having those kind of findings, what kind of training can we provide. We want to have the same kind of quarterly report information coming in from everybody, again, that type of consistency, the training development, and then of course our communication. So we're involving the providers in our strategic plan to kind of move forward as a team. I spoke about the train the trainer. So this is, again, just we're going to be assisting the providers in development of in-house trainers. So right now we're currently training 16 hours of the 20 hours that's required annually for in-service. But we still have a lot of the new hires that have to have that 40-hour orientation. So we're hoping to try to increase some of those training hours that we can assist with, and then if we can get the providers in to assist to do that, we can try to break that up throughout the state and offer some more of that training. Keep going. So our compliance process, we have, of course, our phase 1 where we send out the letter. Our phase 2 is where we do the internal case management review, and pretty much the provider doesn't really get affected by that. They do have to provide the information, but we're not bothering them because our goal is to let them supervise the probationers, right? So we're trying to do this kind of behind the scenes. Of course, we do have an on-site visit, and we meet directly with the director or his or her designee. And then, of course, we provide the final audit and any compliance concerns that we have, and then that usually has a deadline for them to respond to those. So that's, we're just gonna be kind of working through. And now, finally, this is just a breakdown of some of our hot topics that we've talked about throughout the year. Of course, our compliance reviews. I spoke to you about the trends, so we will be looking at anybody that has a 3-year trend. And then, of course, we are changing our best practices language to recommendations. That's just something we always kind of thought best practices, it kind of sounds better just being a recommendation, because most of the time it is a recommendation. Of course, our statewide training. Our new topics for 2019 include interstate compact, motivational interviewing, domestic violence, de-escalation, documentation, case audit process, and of course the DCS board rules and sovereign citizen. So we're trying to, of course, include the same training that we have for the past couple years, but some of the other topics that you can change up, we're going to add some new information for them. Our 2019 registration has been updated, and we also included a satisfaction survey question at the end of their registration. I kind of wanted to streamline it, so if they're already doing the registration, why not answer, have you been satisfied with the progress of what we've done throughout the year? And then again, we're doing internal audits, and we are going to be doing an internal complaint process. So we currently have a formal complaint process, but I would like to kind of go back and look and see if we can formalize that a little bit more for next year. And then, of course, our internal staff team. So it's not always about what can we teach the providers or what are the providers doing wrong. We're interested in what are we doing that we need to correct, or how can we keep our staff trained and up to date. So we will be doing that to include ride-alongs. So one of the thought process is, if you're auditing probation providers, then it's good to kind of make sure that we know what's going on in the field, so that we can be a little bit more understanding when it comes to the information that we're auditing them on. And that is the end of my presentation at this time. If anyone has any questions.
Is there any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chairman, just for understanding, clarification. With the change of the law from allowing the Chief Judge of Superior Court to hire the contractors through the governing authority, what I'm trying to put together in my mind, since you'll have a city authority and a county authority, can you have two now different contractors for probation, or the two governing authorities have to compromise who will make that decision?
I think it would just be one contract. And
So
that's something that they usually work out on the local level, and I just get the contract to make sure that it's in compliance.
Stephen, what y'all hear on?
There can be different providers in those areas, as you said, Terry, one providing the county level courts and one providing municipal. Now, what you see in a great majority of places, it's just one.
Yeah.
There are
So the
some
city and the
places
county sometimes to get together and hire just one to overlap?
I would say no. No, I think it just happens as a course of business.
Migration. So, but for clarification, both governing authorities have the authority to hire their own private company.
Any other
I
questions?
think we have that.
From an audit perspective of those providers, do you publicize those findings?
The provider gets the final report, and the chief judge at this time gets that final report.
I know, like with Judy and I, we have to physically publicize the findings of the audit for those providers. And I was just wondering about
At this time, we don't publish it, but it is subject, of course, to open records.
Yeah. Y'all? Okay. All right, any other questions?
Good job.
I would like to thank Barbara, as she mentioned, the cooperation of Barbara and her staff with the providers, both public and private, has been tremendous and great, not only this year, but previously, and I want to thank her very much.
Tim, they don't know to do. Michael, one quick question before we move into, or we can do it under old business. under old business, let me ask you a question concerning all of your certified officers. Everybody, for their yearly training, all have got all the mandated training, the additional community policing. And
Yes, sir. And what everyone is where they should be. But we do wait until January 1st to address any deficiencies, but there are none that are anticipated. So all there is, that's a good point. We really try to have all the training done by September. But I found myself early December doing a lot of online training. It just happens that way sometimes, truth be known, but it can be an oversight. But we that is part of our audit also.
I just finished my final 2 hours on Monday. Because you just get caught up, and next thing you know, December 31st here. But is there any other business, old business, that needs to be brought to the board? Okay. New business. And I think we have Ms. Neville coming back to present on new business.
New business is that we are requesting a vote to adopt the proposed board rules that were adopted in February 2017. These are the board rules that we also proposed for a change at the last board meeting. We held a public comment meeting on October 24th and had absolutely no public comments. So, and I also posted them electronically and put an electronic public comment out there, and there were no responses. So these are the same exact board rules that were proposed with no changes whatsoever. And we're just requesting a board vote to adopt.
Hearing the report and being familiar with that aspect of the board rules, can I get that in the form of a motion?
Move we adopt.
Move we adopt. Is a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All those ready to vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you for staying with us. I'm so glad. Any opposed? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Motion
you.
carries.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any business that the board members need to bring to our attention or the commissioner's attention before we adjourn?
Merry Christmas.
Hearing none, Michael, I tell you, one of the things that I always enjoy is seeing the guys and the ladies out doing the community service and the video that we seen with the, I call it the helping hands. Those are those unsung heroes that's taking care of things so that we can take care of things here. So it's to be commended on the work that your people are doing in the field. And if nothing else,
The mugs, absolutely. I want to thank Dee and Daphne.
yeah.
I was going to joke and say those are decorations. Don't take them with you. They're really yours to take and enjoy. Yeah. Tom, you're going to have to get some candy back, man. But enjoy, and we truly appreciate what you do for the support of the agency. Our success is attributed to your support, so we appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your leadership. And I got a page and a half of notes.
Good deal.
Hearing nothing else, meeting's adjourned.